If there's one thing that's super important to me in World of Warcraft, it's immersion. Immersion is an important factor in a lot of games, and in fact it's one of the most important factors to me. A lot of the ways you get immersed in a world and its story is through the user interface, the UI. The way you interact with it has a big impact on how you see the game. Your experience with the game will reflect that. If it's a gross and cumbersome intrusive UI, well, it might just irritate the hell out of you and you might not want to deal with it. WoW's default UI isn't bad, but there are plenty of add-ons out there that enhance the experience even further. Today, we're going to be looking at several add-ons. I've compiled a list of add-ons that I think help make WoW extremely immersive, and we're going to be taking a look at them today. Now, the first add-on we're going to take a look at is Azerite UI. I've taken a look at this UI before, and I've made a whole video on how to customize it the way I have it set up down here. The big drawback to Azerite UI when I started using it is that it limited you to 24 buttons, just these buttons right here and nothing below it. So I went ahead and made a whole other video using Bartender and Mask to show you how to customize the UI and add additional buttons to it. On top of the ones that you're seeing here, there's also about 8 extra buttons hidden right here that only show up when I'm in combat. These are things like mostly DPS cooldowns and defensive cooldowns. Azerite UI, quite obviously, severely overhauls the health bars of both you and targeted enemies or friendlies, and the resource meter, which down here for my warrior, this is what the rage one looks like. If you hop on a caster, it tends to look more like a usual mana orb. Down here, quite obviously, is the minimap. If you mouse over the button at the bottom of the minimap, if you're leveling up, it'll show you your experience to the next level, or if you're max level and grinding Azerite power, it'll show you the level and a gauge of how much more you need. When you're in a party or a raid, all the frames will pop up in the top left corner, with nice indicators notifying who's a healer and who's a tank. The chat hangs out just above your health bar. It is kind of a weird position, basically being, right in the center of the left side of the screen as opposed to in one of the corners, but when you're not using the chat log or not in a channel anyone's talking in, the chat log fades away and it doesn't even pop up when you mouse over it. You have to either hit enter or go to the exact position where the channels are located up here. The micro menu that's standard on the WoW UI can just be found by left clicking the cogwheel, and that shows up everything as normal, or if you right click it you have access to Azerite UI's settings. There you can bring out the extra buttons, because when you install it I think it only has about 12. You can change the cast mode if you want an ability to be cast off when you press the button or when you release it. Bind mode, which is obviously just for keybinds. If you want to see your unit frames, nameplates. If you want to see alerts or talking head frames, if you disable the talking head frames, it disables any sound they make also. So it's not like Elf UI where you could hide the talking head frame but you would still hear them talking when they had something to say to you. Azerite UI completely mutes them and what they said will just pop up in a chat. There's also a healer mode now, which allows you to track buffs and debuffs being put on your party members. That was a big issue with Azerite UI when it first released, is that you couldn't see those things unless you physically targeted people in your party, so it made it overly cumbersome to use, which what made me stop using it because at the time I was leveling a priest. Of course, Azerite UI is still in development and they're still adding features for it. Just recently he added functionality for minimap bag button. If you remember in the first video where I showcased it, every add-on you had would kind of hang around, not even around the minimap, but sometimes inside of it. They just had weird anchor points. Now there's a nice convenient little button next to the minimap if you download minimap bag button, and all your add-ons will fly out. The next add-on I want to showcase is one that's fairly new, called Narcissus. Narcissus is a fantastic new way to view the character panel. I mean, the add-on pretty much speaks for itself. I mean, this looks absolutely fantastic. It even has a little photo mode down at the bottom, allowing you to take pictures. Share your transmog by replacing all of the item names with their transmog names, what you have them transmog to, not the actual piece of gear that they are. Allowing you to do emotes to take hilarious screenshots. And as you notice, it also hides the text of any NPCs in the background. And it also comes with an option, just like using Blizzard's options to set different graphic settings in Battlegrounds and Raids. When you go into this mode, you can have it so that it bumps all your graphic settings up to max. I'm already running WoW at max settings, so I don't know if doing this will cause your game to stutter, but it is a feature it has. Now, Narcissus isn't a outright replacer, it is technically still in beta. Any kind of functionality could be coming in the future, but if you double tap the hotkey that you have set for your regular character panel, it'll open Narcissus instead. Which is great, because when the add-on released, that functionality wasn't there, and you had to manually click the add-on in order to get this to pop up. I didn't know the author was planning for a solution like this. My next request was going to be to figure out a way to make a macro to open up this add-on, but he went ahead and did it himself, so it's working fantastically. Now chances are, if you've ever looked up anything on immersive add-ons for World of Warcraft, you've stumbled across Dynamic Cam. Dynamic Cam is just what it sounds like. It's a dynamic camera. What does that mean though? Well, in different situations, the camera will adjust automatically. So out exploring the world, it can be set to a certain zoom value. Once you enter a city, it can zoom in farther to give you a heightened sense of immersion. It also has player head tracking, which just gives you a little bit of camera bob whenever your character moves. This can be especially felt on melee characters, and it really makes the swings and the animations just feel that much more impactful. And of course, all these settings can have their intensity adjusted, as I know a lot of times player head tracking or camera bob can cause some people to get pretty nauseous. You can also set it so that when you talk to NPCs, the camera will rotate and pitch, as well as zoom in onto the NPC themselves to give you a more immersive conversation face. At first glance, the settings for Dynamic Cam are pretty overwhelming. I won't lie, my first time messing with the add-on, I kinda gave up and was just looking for someone else's configuration online. But once I actually sat down and decided I was going to make a video on this add-on, I really got into this add-on and all of its settings. If I can get it working properly, I will have a profile set up for export that you guys can import into your game to hopefully get the same camera settings that I'm running, although I've heard a lot of times it's really buggy and it's not character specific. A caster might want something very different than a melee DPS or even a tank. Basically, if you want to customize Dynamic Cam yourself, there's only a few settings that you'll have to worry about. The zoom settings, do you want it to fit the nameplate, which would usually work if you're targeting NPCs or mobs, whether that be friendly NPCs or bosses to fight, or zoom set to, and this will set the zoom to whatever value you set it to, so it'll zoom out or zoom into that value whenever you enter that given situation. The way Dynamic Cam uses its settings is with the situations. So if you don't want Dynamic Cam to turn on in dungeons or turn on in raids, simply disable that situation and quite obviously it won't. So Dynamic Cam is something that someone who frequently pushes high-end content can use. If they don't like the camera messing with them in Mythic Plus dungeons or raids, simply disable it for that situation, but once you're out of the dungeon or the raid, it'll go back to having an immersive experience. I have tested this in dungeons and raids, and it does work. If you keep the player head tracking to a low value, the camera doesn't freak out, and if you set it to fit nameplate, it'll give you a nice preset camera. The nice thing about Dynamic Cam is if you decide to override it by zooming out, as long as you don't change situations, the camera will stay zoomed out. So if during a boss fight, you need to zoom out your camera to see all of the mechanics, your camera won't change position until you're out of combat. So you can have your camera manually adjusted for the whole duration of that fight. The other settings you might want to worry about is the shoulder offset and the head tracking, like I said. The shoulder offset is just what it sounds like. How far away do you want the camera from either side of your character? Obviously, setting it to its max value isn't realistic. I've seen presets where people usually have it kind of hanging out around 2. I've set this one kind of light for 0.5. For me personally, I found that putting it any higher than about 1.5 could get a little disorienting. And then the head tracking strength. That's what I was talking about earlier, where it'll cause a little bit of camera bob or camera shake as you walk or swing your weapons. I like a little bit of it, but putting too much can be a little nauseating and annoying. And lastly, if you're in a situation where you want to fade the UI, I have it so when I am on flight paths, what the situation calls taxis, it'll have my UI just fade out like I pressed Ctrl-Z. If you need the UI back to talk in guild chat, go through your bags, just press the escape and it'll all come back. So again, as I said, if I can get the export to work properly, I do have another account. I'm going to try and set it up and see if it works. If it doesn't, well, if it does work, you'll see a link to it or the import string in the description of this video. If not, if you don't see it there, then I didn't get it to work. Another add-on that's fairly popular, if you've ever looked up immersive add-ons, is an add-on called Storyline. This overhauls the chat panel and the quest panel when you interact with NPCs, allowing you to choose your conversation options and obviously putting the NPC and you on a panel to make it look like you're actually talking to each other. They'll also give you quest text and much smaller blocks of text, allowing you to actually go through and read all of it if you want, instead of skimming through it and skipping ahead. I like to use this when I'm leveling alts, especially through zones I've never leveled through before, because it really helps me get the story of them. As much as I might want to just skip over all the quest text just to get through the zone as fast as possible and obviously level up, but taking it slow and actually reading through everything it's nice sometimes, and this add-on presents it in a very nice and clean way. So that's pretty much all I have for now and for this video. I'm fully aware that Soul So Breezy just made a video showcasing Azerite UI and Narcissus together, but when I saw his video, I thought, well, it's been a while since I revisited Azerite UI, and adding Dynamic Cam to this would just make everything so much more immersive. Myself being a role player, immersion is key to me, and I could even throw a couple more add-ons in this video, but They're more related to roleplay than they are straight up gameplay, so they might not appeal to everyone. So again, if you want to know how to set up Azerite UI like I have mine, I have a video like that already on my channel that I'll have linked in the video description. If you liked this video or found it helpful, hey, maybe give me a like. And if you like MMO and World of Warcraft related content, or want to see more add-on showcases in the near future, maybe consider subscribing. Until next time, I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you very soon.